Thanks, Jan. Morning, everybody. And particular welcome. I'm conscious that this time of year there might be people who are here for the first time. Maybe you're new to Bradford. Maybe it's a fresh start here at Sunbridge. It's great to have you with us. If we haven't met, my name is Matthew. I'm one of the pastors here. And September it's a time of new starts, isn't it? Particularly for those who are kind of locked into the school year and the academic calendar. It's a time when you're kind of looking at another year that is coming. And this particular September is a significant time for us as a church family. As lots of you will be aware, we've recently signed a building contract with Whitaker and Leach that's due to start a week tomorrow, so 16th of September. And our plan is next Sunday to have a breaking ground ceremony. So the plan is that next Sunday, rather than meet here at 10:30, we'll meet across the road at the new site. And we'll take that first half an hour, 10:30 to 11, to have a breaking ground ceremony on the new site. Whitaker and Leach, the builders, are planning to be there. And then we'll come across to here and be here for our morning service from 11 to 12. And we're going to spend next week focusing particularly on the building project. We often try and do that once a year. So it's a big time. Please come. Please invite others who might like to be there next Sunday. It would be great to keep praying. We are still waiting for plans to come back. We've heard something this week which gives us hope that there's life in the planning department. The guy who needs to sign it off is due back from holiday tomorrow, so please pray that goes through tomorrow. There's hope that it should do, but it'd be great to be praying for that. So for us, looking ahead at this coming year, 2024-25, in my heart, there's two obvious aims alongside our normal aims as a church family. One is to get this building built. The builders have given us a time scale of a year construction. But also for us as a church, and I think this aim is equally important, to prepare in our hearts, in our ministry, to learn to engage with people living around us here. A huge part of our vision with this new building is to engage with the local community, to be an open door throughout the week. But we need to learn how to do that, don't we? Actually, as a church, we need to learn what it is to engage with people living in the inner city. We need to grow in that, and I include myself in that. So one aim for us as a church is to build a building, but there's another aim which is equally important, which is to learn how to use this building and to learn how to serve and get to know and include people living around here. Our aim as a church in that sense is to be a city church with a local presence. We're a church made up of people from all over Bradford, and that's great. But we also want to be a church that has a presence here, where people here are blessed and can see more of God's love. And so for most of this term, we're going to be looking at the book of James. James is a New Testament letter, and it's a very practical letter. And there's a particular focus in the book of James on the importance of caring for the poor and the destitute. And James is also a real spur to action, so it feels like an appropriate book for us to be looking at as a church. But this morning, we're not going to start James yet. Today, our theme is enjoying God. Now, why is that our theme? Well, God's put that on my heart for a couple of reasons. I think the first is that actually, we're not going to share, are we, or reflect God if we're not enjoying him ourselves. This is the way it works, isn't it, with the Lord? We can put on events, we can do activities, we can force ourselves to do things. But actually, if we're not enjoying the Lord ourselves, we're not full of his love, actually, we're not going to share him or reflect him with others. Whereas actually, if we're enjoying the Lord, it's easy, isn't it? It's natural to share him with those around us. We have talked in the past as a church about the idea of going deep to reach wide. You think of how a bridge, if it's going to span a huge gap, it needs deep foundations, doesn't it? And similarly for us, if we're going to really reach wide into Bradford and into this community, we need deep foundations in the Lord. We need to be deep in the Lord ourselves. And I think too, I'm conscious James is a very practical letter and it's full of lots of instruction. But it's healthy if we're reading James from a place of enjoying God. The danger with a book like James can be we just hear it as kind of being hit with a punch over and over again. Or someone putting rocks into a rucksack that already feels quite heavy. But actually, as we're enjoying God ourselves, we'll hear James as the counsel of a friend. As a loving God who's leading us in his ways. So that's what we're going to do this morning. I just want to read a couple of passages as we start. We're going to be jumping around a bit this morning and looking. I want to be sharing some stuff in this book, which I'll explain a bit later. But just as we jump in, I want to read a couple of passages, one from Luke chapter 10, and then one from John chapter 15. So firstly, Luke 10, verses 38 to 42. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." It's a familiar story. We might have heard it before. There's, Mary and Martha, and they're hosting Jesus. And I don't know what it's like in your house, but in our house, that's a real time for getting the house sorted and cleaning when people are coming over. Imagine Jesus is coming to your house. You want to scrub in those places you don't normally scrub and get everything ready. And that's what Martha's doing. She's busy doing stuff for Jesus. And Jesus comes to her and he says, "No, Martha, actually only one thing is needed." And he points at Mary, and what's Mary doing? She's sitting at Jesus' feet, spending time with him, listening to what he's saying. Actually, this is Jesus' heart for us. He wants us to be with him, to listen to him, to enjoy him. There's some of you might have heard of something called the Westminster Catechism. It's a kind of summary of the key truths of the Christian faith. And the first question it asks is, what is the chief end of man? And by man there, it just means humanity. What is the chief end? What's our main purpose as human beings? And the answer is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Actually, that's what we're all about. That's why we're here. Sometimes I think we can think the Christian life is about getting stuff from God. Or maybe we think the Christian life is about doing stuff for God. But actually, at the heart of what it is to be a Christian is God himself, enjoying him for who he is. We'll just flick across to John 15. It's another passage I find really helpful when I'm thinking about this subject. John 15, and I'll read from verse 5 to 17. This is Jesus teaching. Jesus says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you're like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Indeed, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you may go and bear fruit, fruit that will last." Well, again, it might be a familiar passage to us. It's this picture of a vine and branches. And the point is, if we're not connected to Jesus, there's going to be no fruit. Just like if you sever a branch from the vine, from the trunk of the vine, before long it's dead, isn't it? And it's the same for us. We can try our best, we can put things on, but if we're not connected to Jesus, there'll be no fruit that lasts, that really counts. And positively, there's a wonderful truth in here, isn't there? That actually, if we are abiding in Christ, if we're walking closely with him, if we're enjoying him, if we're obeying him, well, there's a promise that we will be fruitful. Actually, he will be at work in our lives and through our lives. And yes, Jesus does invite us here, doesn't he, to join in with the Father's work. But he does so as friends. Isn't that a wonderful reality? As Jesus invites us into the work of the Father, he does so as friends. He shares his plans and the Father's plans with us. And actually, as we come to the book of James later in the term, that's how we need to hear James. It's actually, we're being included in the Father's plans, in his ways and his concerns. Jesus' heart here is that his joy might be in us and our joy might be complete. Well, this morning will be a bit different because I want to share a few things from this book. It's a book called Enjoying God. I've mentioned it, I think, on a men's day away before. It's a book that I found really helpful. It's written by Tim Chester, and the kind of tagline on the book is "Experience the power and love of God in everyday life." So I just want to share a few insights from the book. I'll only be able to cover a little bit of what's in there, but I hope it's helpful for you as it has been helpful for me. He starts with two principles. The first principle is this. He says, God is known, I think this will come up on the screen, God is known through the three persons. So we relate to the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And as Christians, we worship the triune God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. That's how he's revealed himself. And that's how we then know him and enjoy him. I think it can be easy, can't it, in our spiritual lives to kind of imagine God like this kind of abstract force or power. You know, when the world around us talks about God, I think that's what they have in mind, a kind of force or a power. And if we're relating to a force or a power, it's very impersonal, isn't it? And God seems very distant and vague and hard to relate to. But actually, God reveals himself as persons, Father, Son, and Spirit. So as we relate to God, we're relating to persons. God is the three in one, this eternal community in which the Father, Son, and Spirit relate to one another in love. And that's how we then relate to God. So a lot of this book is helping us think about how do we enjoy the Father? How do we enjoy the Son? How do we enjoy the Spirit day by day? And he has a question in here, which I'm going to get us to think about now for a moment. If we have the next slide. Thanks, Ashley. The question is this: with which member of the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, or God the Spirit, do you have the strongest sense of a lived, experienced relationship? So saying just day by day, maybe in your prayers, maybe as you go through life, maybe when difficult things happen, like which member of the Trinity would you tend to relate to? So I'm going to actually get us to just turn to the person next to us and have a go at answering that question. Okay, now if you're thinking, I have no idea what that is all about, just say to the person next to you, I have no idea what that is all about, and hopefully they might have a sense. If they don't, you can find someone else, okay, and bring them in. All right, so just turn to the person next to you. What do you think? There's no right answers to this. What do you think? All right, let's come back together. Let's come back together. Sorry if you were just getting going in this conversation. We can keep that conversation going, you know, after the service over tea and coffee. And if for those of us who are in growth groups, there may well be a chance this Tuesday to discuss this a little bit more. But, you know, it changes, doesn't it, sometimes? I remember for me, as a Christian, early on in my Christian life, I would always pray to Jesus. And I remember reading a book called Knowing God. Just spoke about the wonderful privilege we have of knowing God as our Father, how we're adopted into his family. And it just changed my relationship and understanding with God. So that's the first principle, and we'll come back to this a bit later on this morning. We can relate to Father, Son, and Spirit in the ups and downs of day-to-day life. The second principle is this: our unity with God in Christ is the basis of our community with God in experience. Now, this is the bit that's the most sort of theological and technical, so bear with me. I found this enormously helpful. Okay, so just try and stay in there for a minute or two. Okay, our unity with God in Christ is the basis for our community with God in experience. And Tim Chester draws a distinction between our union with God and our communion with him. And maybe the best way to kind of understand this is to ask another question. Does what we do affect our relationship with God? How do you answer that? Does what we do affect our relationship with God? Well, some of us will immediately be thinking, no, Matthew. No, Matthew, our relationship with God isn't based on what we do, it's based on what Christ has done. You know, if we have a bad day, we're still just as much part of God's family. We're still forgiven. We're still redeemed. We're still heirs with Christ. And that's true, isn't it? Now, that's talking about our union with God. You know, God the Father, through the death of God the Son and the work of God the Spirit, has adopted us into his family. We're forgiven. We're cleansed. We're joined to Christ. And that doesn't change, does it? It doesn't, day by day, that doesn't go up and down. That's a constant. It's steadfast. Our union with God is secure. But actually, from our union with God, God's heart is that we would enjoy communion with him. And communion with God is our lived experience of God day by day. So God has joined us to himself. He's brought us into his family so that we can enjoy him and relate to him. And actually, our experience of God, our communion with God day by day can go up and down, can't it? Tim Chester uses a really helpful analogy. So rather than try and do it again, I'm just going to read it out for us. It says, imagine two sons. Jack makes breakfast for his father every day, and they chat for half an hour while they eat it together. Later in the day, Jack and his father hang out together, flying a kite, playing football, reading a book. Meanwhile, Jack's older brother, Phil, is embarrassed by his father. Phil stays in his room all day with his music turned up loud. On the rare occasion when Phil communicates with his father, it normally takes the form of dismissive grunts. How many sons does the father have? The answer, of course, is 2. And what did they do to become sons? Nothing. They were simply born as sons. But only Jack enjoys being a son. Only Jack experiences a good relationship with his father. It's helpful, isn't it? You know, if we're born again, if we're part of God's family, that doesn't change. God's done that on our behalf. But we can enjoy God, or actually we can ignore the opportunity we've got to enjoy God day by day. And, you know, we're going to be thinking later about things like praying and reading our Bible. Often we can think of those things, can't we, to some degree, as things we have to do for God. But actually they're an invitation. They're an opportunity for us to enjoy him. So our communion with God actually does change depending on what we do. Like any relationship, as we invest in that relationship, there's enjoyment. As we neglect that relationship, there's less joy and satisfaction. I remember in our marriage, a couple of years ago, I think it was, there was a really significant turning point for Alice and I. I think life had got very busy, and our marriage had become a bit functional. You know, things were fine, but really we were giving our time to lots of other things. And then as we had time together, we were doing just enough to kind of keep us afloat, if that makes sense. So there weren't massive problems, but actually we were doing just enough in terms of our time together to kind of keep us afloat with all these other focuses. And I remember I certainly, and I think we together to some degree, had this sense of we don't want to get to the end of our lives and look back and thought we never enjoyed one another. We never enjoyed our marriage. And that was quite a turning point. It changed our attitude, actually, to our time together, to our investment in our marriage. And I think it can be similar with God, can't it? You know, for some of us, we'll relate to that reality that we're busy with all sorts of things and we're kind of staying afloat with God. We're not in absolute turmoil. We're just doing enough to tick by. But I guess I ask us the same question. You know, do we want to get to the end of our lives and look back and thought, I never really enjoyed God. I always gave him just enough to keep going. But I had this opportunity before me to enjoy him and spend time with him, to know him more. It's an incredible reality, isn't it? That the living God, the God who's made all things, his heart is to know us, to relate to us. And really the focus of this book is, well, how can we actually do that? What does that look like day by day? Because this isn't just for Sunday mornings or Tuesday evenings or 15 minutes in the morning. Actually, God intends to have communion with us throughout the day in the ups and downs of life. So I'm just going to share some of the examples that Tim Chester gives. Firstly, thinking about how we enjoy God the Father. And there's a chapter that's called In Every Pleasure We Can Enjoy the Father's Generosity. In every pleasure, we can enjoy the Father's generosity. You know, we've got a Heavenly Father who delights in us as his children. We have a Heavenly Father who loves to give good gifts to his children. You know, Jesus, when he's teaching in Matthew 6, says, look, we shouldn't worry because we have got a Heavenly Father who'll look after us. You know, it can be a helpful thing, can't it, for us to reflect every day on the things we enjoy, but then to appreciate them as gifts from our Father. A cup of coffee in the morning, a game of football with friends, an assignment that we managed to hand in on time, a walk in the woods as the leaves start to change colour in the autumn. And actually all of these things are gifts from our Heavenly Father. Some of us will be in the habit of giving thanks before a meal, you know, of praying before we eat to give thanks to God for the food. And it's a funny thing, isn't it? I think it's a good thing that we have that habit. But it's interesting that we give thanks to God for food before meals, but kind of other bits of life seem to miss out. Actually, that's a healthy reality that we pause and reflect that actually this is God's provision. It's his kindness. Actually, just pausing to say, thank you, Lord. It doesn't have to be a big, long prayer, does it? It might just be that we see a beautiful sunset. We just say, thank you, Lord. Or we get that cup of coffee in the morning. We just say, thank you, Lord. And we recognize the Father's generosity to us. I find one of the things that triggers this for me is when I walk the dog near our house, there's a stream. And the stream is always running. You know, obviously it's running on a day like this, but it can be the middle of the summer, it hasn't rained for weeks, and it's always running. And it helps me marvel at the world that God has made, that he's set things up so that, you know, the rain falls, and it falls into the ground, and the ground slowly releases it so we don't get flooded. You know, and then it goes into just marveling at the water cycle, that actually every day that stream is running as I walk. There's something healthy, isn't there, in recognizing God's goodness. Gratitude leads us closer to God. It helps us to enjoy the giver rather than just seeing the gift. So that's one example. Another one, in every hardship, we can enjoy the Father's formation. Tim tells the story, or gives an example of a child on a climbing frame in the playground. And they go with confidence right up to the top bit, and then there's that bit where you've got to climb over the top and come down the other side, and you suddenly feel very vulnerable, and they kind of pause and freeze a little bit. And they call over to their dad, and they say, "Dad, can you help me?" And the dad comes over, he says, "No, you can do it. You can do it. Go on, you can do it." And then they're still not sure. Say, "Dad, can you help me?" So, Dad moves underneath, but he says, "No, go on, you can do it." And slowly, they reach out the leg and move their way over and come down the other side. That's there's an intention, isn't there, from the Father to train the child, to help them to grow up and mature. And we have a Heavenly Father like that. At times, he'll lead us into difficult situations where we feel out of our depth, where we feel unsure and vulnerable. And it can feel like he's just abandoned us, that we're on our own. But he's always underneath, isn't he? Waiting to catch us. And actually, it's an intentional part of his care for us, to grow us to maturity. So often I think when hardship comes, we assume God is absent. Or we assume that these trials are somehow getting in the way of God's plans. But often actually God has plans in the midst of trials for us. And I think when we get our heads around this, it really shapes things, doesn't it? When bad things come at us, actually we can pause and we can say, "Father, I trust that you're going to teach me some stuff in this. I trust that you'll be at work in this. I trust that in the midst of this, actually, you'll be making me more like your Son." In every prayer, we can enjoy the Father's welcome. One of the things I enjoy in the mornings when the kids wake up is that they'll often just run in and want to sit on my knee in the mornings. And often there's not much to say, particularly at that time in the morning. But slowly, there might be a few questions about what's on that day, or there might be something that they need from me. But the point is actually they just want to come and be there and be present. Now imagine if my children started to come in the morning and they all came in with a list and they said, "Dad, this is what I need from you. Okay, see you later." And off they went. Something's wrong, isn't there, in that? But then think about how we come to our Heavenly Father. I think for me, for a long time, I saw prayer as a task, as something I had to do. So good praying was getting through a lot of stuff. If a good prayer time would mean I'd worked through a long list of things and brought them to God. And it is important, isn't it, to bring our petitions to God. But for me, something changed when I realized that actually prayer is an invitation into relationship. Just as my kids enjoy in the morning coming in and just spending a bit of time with Dad, actually prayer is an opportunity for us to spend some time with our Father. And in the midst of that, there will be some things we need to ask him for, won't there? But that's not all of it. And this is what Jesus teaches us, doesn't he? He teaches us to come and say, "Our Father," to spend time with our Father in secret. This is what Jesus did. He withdrew from the crowds to spend time with his Father. And actually, maybe that's something that will change our experience of prayer, to realize actually it's a welcome from our Father to spend time with him. Now, it might be that even if I've spoken about enjoying God as Father, you've had a really difficult experience with your earthly father, and you find that difficult. And I want to encourage you to press on in that, because God by his Spirit will help you. In Romans chapter 8, we're told that part of the work of God's Spirit is to enable us to enjoy God as our Heavenly Father. Let me just read, sorry, I haven't got this on the screen, I don't think, but let me just read that from Romans chapter 8. It says this, it says, "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves, so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship, and by him we cry, 'Abba, Father.' The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children." Sometimes we have to learn this stuff, don't we? It's not always natural and easy. But actually, God the Spirit helps us to enjoy God the Father. What about enjoying God the Son? Well, one of these chapters is called, "In every failure we can enjoy the Son's grace." Jesus is both our great high priest and the perfect sacrifice. And that means not only has he dealt with our sin, but he continues to deal with our sin. Again, I think often when we get stuff wrong, when we stubbornly go our own way instead of God's way, that failure often can separate us from God, can't it? We can be overcome with guilt. We can assume God doesn't want to do anything with me right now. I kind of have to slowly work my way back into his presence. We can assume that God's disappointed in me. But actually, there's another scenario where our failure brings us to God. Actually, our failure enables us to enjoy God in his grace. There's a verse in Hebrews, I think this might come up on the screen, Hebrews 7:25. What do we imagine Jesus is doing right now? Hebrews 7:25 says, therefore he, that is Jesus our high priest, is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives to intercede for them. Isn't that amazing? Right now, what's Jesus doing? If we're part of his people, he's interceding for us before the Father. And he's doing that all the time. Whether we're sleeping, whether we're praying, he's doing that. He's always there before the Father on our behalf. Isn't that remarkable? So it means actually in our failure, we can come again to Jesus and say, thank you, Jesus, for your sacrifice. Thank you that doesn't define me. Thank you that there's forgiveness. In every pain, we can enjoy the Son's presence. When we read through the Gospels, the Jesus we see in the Gospels is the Jesus we relate to today. He hasn't changed. His character hasn't changed. I found this so helpful. As you watch Jesus interact with different people, he meets the widow at Nain in her loss with the death of her firstborn son. He welcomes the sinful woman who's used to shame and rejection. He's present in huge anxiety and fear for Jairus as his daughter is on the edge of death. As Jesus meets people in their loss, in their shame, in their fear, well, that is how Jesus meets us in those things. And his words to them, don't cry, go in peace, don't be afraid. They're his words to us. It isn't just that Jesus walks with them back then, but he walks with us in these things. And it's not just that he walks with us, he himself has experienced these things, hasn't he? So again, a verse in Hebrews, if we have that on the slide. Thanks, Ashley. Talking about Jesus as our high priest, says, therefore, the next one. It says, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to feel sympathy for our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. One of the things that Tim Chess has throughout this book is at the end of each chapter, he gives a kind of little example of what this might look like on a Monday morning, and he follows this family, Mike and Emma. So for this chapter of In Every Pain We Can Enjoy the Son's Presence, this is what he says. He says, back at home, Emma is ushering the children out of the door. 1, 2, 3. She thinks of Rosie. 4. Every day she thinks of Rosie, their 4th child, born with a malformed heart and dead at 3 months. Absent and yet always present. 2 years on, Emma still feels the loss. It hurts. Here on the doorstep, it hurts. Time will heal, people had said. She knows they're trying to be positive, but she doesn't want to be positive. Sometimes she just wants to weep. Emma thinks of Jesus weeping with Mary when Lazarus had died. He didn't give Mary a lecture. He just wept with her. Jesus knew what it was like. After all, Lazarus had been his friend. Emma thinks of the friends who've wept with her. It had been a comfort, but people had stopped talking about it. No one really knows the pain she still feels. No one? Her thoughts go back to Jesus. She's been talking as if Jesus belonged in the past. She thinks about Jesus in heaven, looking down into her home. Does Jesus see her broken heart? Yes, surely he does. Does he sympathize with Emma as he did with Mary? Jesus has said, surely I am with you always. I'm not alone, Emma tells herself, not even in the grief that no one else sees. So enjoying the Father, enjoying the Son, enjoying God the Spirit. In every temptation, we can enjoy the Spirit's life. Part of the description in the New Testament of a believer is someone who is now living by the Spirit rather than the flesh. And the flesh is our own human strength. And one of the quotes in here, it talks about someone who says, look, I don't want my life to be explainable simply by my own strength. People should look at my life and say that's only possible because of the Spirit. And positively that might mean depending on the Spirit as we push out of our comfort zone. Again, he gave a picture of someone who had a very normal family car, and then someone has bought them a supercar. And after a week with the supercar, they come back and they say, look, I didn't really notice any difference. And then he finds out that they've only been driving 10 miles an hour on the school run. And he says, well, maybe it can be like that with the Spirit in our lives. We stay in our comfort zone, and we never need to rely on the Spirit. And actually, positively, sometimes this means pushing out of our comfort zone, saying, Holy Spirit, I need you to help me here. I'm not going to be able to do this on my own. And enjoying the life he gives. But it can also be depending on the Spirit as we face temptation. We no longer have to sin. And when we're in those moments, where we're in the middle of exploding with rage, where we're heading off in a sulk, where we're making things all about us, where we're finding refuge in pornography, where we're exaggerating to impress, often in those moments we can think, well, God doesn't want anything to do with me right now. But actually, it's in those moments, isn't it, where the Spirit wants to help us, wants to help us turn around, wants to help us change our decisions, wants to help us say sorry and deal with what's gone on. And sometimes it can just be a simple prayer, can't it? Spirit, help me. I need your help right now. In every word, we can enjoy the Spirit's voice. Part of knowing God, a significant part of knowing God, is reading his word, is reading the Bible. And the Bible is a relational book. It's an opportunity to get to know God better, to enjoy our relationship with him. In Hebrews 4, chapter 12, if we have that up, it says the word of God is alive and active, living and active. When we read the Bible, and we're going to suggest in a minute some opportunities or different ways to enjoy God's word over the next few months. Reading the Bible isn't primarily about gaining facts about a book. It's important, isn't it, that we understand what we're reading? It's important that we learn. But actually, ultimately, what is the Bible about? Why do we read the Bible? It's to get to know God. It's to enjoy him. It's to hear from him. And actually, part of the Spirit's work is to bring this book to life. So that as we read, we're not just reading words that were written a long time ago, but God, by his Spirit, is speaking into our hearts and our lives today. That continues to be something that amazes me and brings great joy. Whether it's preparing for a sermon, whether it's spending time in God's word in the morning. That often, if I'm honest, I can come and I think, I don't know what's going to be here for me this morning. But actually something in that passage God uses to speak into my life, to a situation that I'm facing. And just to encourage us in that, I think part of that is changing the way we see our times with the Lord in the morning. If we think really what my aim is here is to get through chapter 21 and move on to chapter 22, I'm going to bosh this out. That's what we're going to accomplish, isn't it? We will have read a chapter. But if actually our heart and our longing, I want to hear from God, I want to spend time with him. Part of that, I think, means slowing down. My experience is often we'll be reading through and there's suddenly something that will jump out at us and hit us a bit. And actually, sometimes we just need to slow down and stop at that point. Maybe write something down. Maybe spend some time in prayer. If we don't get on to the rest of the chapter, that's okay. Sometimes I think it means praying as we read. Asking God to show us something, to keep our hearts soft. Earlier in the summer, Alice and I had a conversation, and we were just, I think often the summer provides a chance to reflect a bit, doesn't it, on life. And again, we were just reflecting on where things were at in life. And one of the things we identified was that whilst things were ticking along okay, our passion for the Lord had gone. So we're still serving and doing things, and it wasn't like there was some great circumstantial issue. But our passion, our love, our delight in the Lord had gone. And we realized that's not healthy, is it? It's not long if you stay in that place before you burn up and you dry out. And as part of that conversation, we decided, well, we want to try and get up a bit earlier in the morning so that we actually enjoy some uninterrupted time with the Lord. In our circumstances of family life and things, it kind of has to be early in the morning. But our heart in that, it wasn't because we felt we had to, or we felt we ought to, or God would be disappointed if we did. We wanted to. We recognized that actually we weren't enjoying time with God. And actually that's really what life is all about. And since doing that, it's been a great blessing. Because actually the rest of our life is lived from a foundation of time with him. Now, just as we finish, I want to get a bit more practical to help us think, what might this look like for us to enjoy God? And I think sometimes with this kind of investment, sometimes there's things we have to put off as well as put on. So I've just got a picture that's going to come up. Just look at that picture. It's two people out for dinner. How does that picture make you feel? And you might have seen that kind of scenario. You might have been in that kind of scenario. When I see that scene, either in that picture or in person, there's a sadness. That's how I feel. I feel there's a sadness. Not because what they're looking at on their phones is particularly evil or an issue, but they're missing something, aren't they? They're missing out on something better. They could be there enjoying one another and enjoying that moment, and instead their attention is all going here to their phone. And I think the danger is the same might be happening in our relationship with God. You know, one of the things I've been thinking about this summer is my relationship with my phone. They change us, don't they? You know, I haven't had a smartphone for that long, but I've noticed since having one just how it's shaped and changed my behavior. I get up in the morning and I immediately want to go check my phone. You know, as soon as I'm a bit bored, out comes my phone. If I'm feeling a bit hard done by, I come to my phone. Actually, aren't those all the moments when naturally we would go to the Lord? Aren't those all the moments where naturally we would look up and we say, Lord, I need your help. Lord, I want to come to you. And I speak about this, not again, I think often when we talk about technology, it kind of feels like this anti-technology vibe. My heart in this isn't primarily that my phone is full of awful things. It might just be scrolling down BBC News, it might be checking messages, it might be emails. It's more, what are we missing out on? You know, what are we missing out on? Just like that couple who are sat there on their phones in the restaurant. Isn't that the same with us? You know, as I reflected, I just thought, I'm giving so many of my good hours to this. And actually, it doesn't bring life. There's a verse in Jeremiah that talks about how God's people have turned from him, the source of living water, and have turned to cisterns that are broken and cracked and dry. And you get the comparison. God is an abundant source of life. And instead we give ourselves to these. It's no comparison, is it? So I think reality is, it might be we say, look, I want to enjoy God, but it just doesn't seem to work out. Part of it for us might be putting some boundaries around our phones. For us, it's meant putting our phones downstairs so we don't look at it first thing and last thing. I've deleted all my browsers on this, so it's a bit less interesting. It might look something different for you. So it might mean we need to take some action to make some space in our lives for God. But then there's an opportunity to invest. And I've got 4 practical things. There's all sorts of ways, you know, we could grow in enjoying God, but just 4 practical things to mention. The first is this book, Enjoying God. So there's some copies in the lounge. You can also buy it online. We'll put a link in the email. I found it very practical, very accessible, and the end of each chapter has some little discussion questions. So if you found this morning interesting, if it's kind of whetted your appetite, I'd encourage you to buy the book. They're £7. You can buy them here. You can get them online. But I'd also encourage you, maybe do this with a friend. So maybe find someone else, someone in your growth group, someone in your family, and say, let's read this together. You know, and let's talk about it together and discuss it together. And if you do get this book, another thing I want to encourage you to do, when you've finished it, find someone else in the church and say, I want you to have this, and pass it on. So often with books, what happens, we read them, and then we just shove them on a shelf, and they do no one any good for the next 25 years. So if you've got this book, you know, and you're happy to do that, you know, read it, benefit from it, and pass it on. So we can all benefit from that. So that's one opportunity to go deeper with the Lord. The second opportunity, in terms of how we might get into God's words, Richard Tarr is going to come and share about a book that he's written. Thanks, Richard.
Good morning, everyone. Just briefly from me, about 20 years ago, I came across a really good list of the 42 most important chapters you should read in the Bible, which I thought, when I looked at them, I thought, actually, they make a lot of sense. They're really good chapters. But I also thought, on their own, without any kind of guide to them, they're not really as helpful as they might be. And if you're at all got any experience in the faith, you'll know that people will often say, I don't know where to start with the Bible. They might be searching for Jesus, or they might have come to Jesus, and they just don't know where to start and how to get on with it. So I thought to myself, well, what if I could do a bit of a guide to those 42 chapters that I could give to people? And there were 2 things that I thought people were missing, and this is based on the conversations I was having with people. One was, how can I trust the Bible? Where was it written? Who wrote it? How does it all hang together? And so they didn't know how to know the Bible. The second thing was, well, what do the chapters actually mean? If I'm reading, for example, Mark chapter 1, and it mentions the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, how does that lead me to a belief in the Trinity? So there's knowing God in it as well. What does it mean to read? How do I know God when I read the Bible? So I wanted to write a guide that helped people to know the Bible and help people to know God as an introduction. And so I worked on something which I've been giving out for best part of 20 years now, actually. And until last year, they were just printed off A4, stapled together, and handed out as I met people who I felt that need met. But last year, I found out on Amazon that you can actually self-publish and you can make it look a little bit more professional. So now it looks like this. And the format is this, that 42 readings, 42 chapters, which is obviously then 6 weeks. Each day begins with a knowing the Bible. So you read a little bit about the context of the chapter that it was written into. You read the chapter, and then there's a bit on knowing God. And that talks to you a little bit about, the theology or why do Christians believe that? Or these words, redemption and reconciliation, how do they all work? So it's bite-sized chunks of introduction to these themes. The forward in it gives other ways in which you can do it. So you could follow that structure, or there are 3 other structures in which you can use. So it depends on how you want to follow your plan. But basically, if you followed the plan in here, and you would need a Bible to go with it, it's not all in here, it's just my bits in here, it'd be about 15 minutes a day. Okay, so at the end in the lounge, I'll be out the back if you want to talk to me about it. Okay.
Thanks, Richard. So it might be actually that habit of reading the Bible regularly is new to you, and that would be a great place to start. So if you're interested, I think Richard's got some copies with him. There's also in the lounge on a table there some copies of a New Testament reading plan. It's taken from the YouVersion Bible app. There's lots of different reading plans on there. So again, maybe you think, look, I'd really like to try and read through the New Testament. I think this one's in 90 days. But again, the aim isn't about working through it quickly, is it? But sometimes I know what I can find is I sit down and I just think I haven't got a thought of where I'm going to go. And actually a reading plan could just help each morning say, this is where I'm at this morning. So again, if maybe you've never read through the New Testament and you'd like that challenge, there's some paper copies through there. I'll send around the link as well, an email tomorrow. And then Chris Spaxfield's going to come and share about another opportunity.
Hi, everyone. You'll remember before the summer, I came up to speak about something called the Crosslands Foundation course. I've got some slides. Basically, it's a short, flexible course. It's designed to help us grow in the knowledge and love and enjoyment of God through His Word. So very much of what Matthew's been speaking about this morning. The first module that we'll be looking at is called Reading and Understanding the Bible. And really, it's sort of, the question that's sort of there is, when we read the Bible, what are we drawn to? We can be drawn in lots of different directions, as Matthew said, and really what it wants us to get to see is that when we read the Bible, we want to be drawn to Jesus. And it'll be looking at sort of the epistles and gospels and the Psalms of David, but thinking that question, are we being drawn to Jesus as we read? It's mainly self-study. There'll be 3 in-person meetings, which I'll mention in a moment. But there's a time commitment. It's sort of 1.5 to 2 hours of study a week, so probably, I guess, an evening per week. It lasts for 3 months, so our introductory meeting will be on the 18th of September, and then it runs through until the 4th of December. As I say, there's 3 Wednesdays that we'll be meeting. It's on your cards, and you see up on the screen. So I say our introductory meeting is the Wednesday, the 18th of September, and then Wednesday, the 16th of October, and Wednesday, the 4th of December. In particular, those 2 second meetings, they have what's sort of called the flipped learning approach. And some of you might know what that means. I didn't. But basically, if you think of it, when we're learning as a group, we tend to take in core information, and then we go away and go deeper, in our own time. But with this Crosslands course, it's basically flipped. So each week we do our own sort of learning of the core stuff, and then in those meetings we come together to go deeper and to apply the learning. And there's sort of 4 R's that they've given that kind of shapes those meetings. So we'll spend some time recalling the key ideas that we've been learning about, reflecting on some of the questions we've been answering, reaching further by asking new questions that arise from what we've been looking at, and then responding and praying. And I say, it might sound intense, but basically each week we're doing the prep work. So really, actually, all the stuff will be there at our fingertips for the meeting so that we can just actually have a really good conversation and look about how it applies to our lives. There's a cost. It's £15 a person. I think I've calculated that. There's about £1.50 a week, so the cost of a soft drink, or I don't think you can get a coffee for that now. But generally, it's quite inexpensive. But there are bursaries available for those who might struggle, and speak to me or to Pastor Matthew or someone on the leadership team. We want to make this as sort of as accessible to many people as possible. But particularly for those who are in leadership roles at SRM, it'd be lovely to have some of you who could come along and just see how that can amplify and help you mature as a leader. Finally, there'll be a sign-up link. I think that'll be going out with the church news this week, so you'll be able to register directly for that. Or you can come and see me. I'll be at the back, just by the doors, and you can give me your details and I can register you. But I do ask, if you're going to sign up online, please can you do it by the end of this Wednesday this week, Wednesday the 11th, just to give me some time to contact group members and plan for the meeting on the 18th.
Thanks, Chris. So if you're interested in that, go and see Chris afterwards. There's been a lot of kind of ideas, information just at the end there, but just remember where we began, with Mary and Martha. Jesus' heart for us is to be with him, to listen to him, to spend time with him. And I hope this morning, there's an excitement in that for us as individuals, but also for us as a church, that we've been invited by God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, to enjoy him, to know him day by day. I'm going to invite the band up. We're going to sing in a moment to finish. But just before we do, I want you to turn to the person next to you. What's God put on your heart from this morning? It's a great danger, isn't it, on Sunday mornings? We sit here and there's something where we think, that's really important. And then we go off into life and it disappears. So just turn to the person next to you. Maybe there's something where you think, that would be just right for me, or I'm really excited about that, or that needs to change. Just turn to the person next to you. What's God put on your heart? And then we'll sing together.